But with Bret and him being injured, did you think, any part of you think, because the original plan, if I have this correct, was that Bret and Shawn were going to do something at King of the Ring. And then when Bret's injured, that changes. And so they pivot and we're going to talk about what they did. Did you think at all that maybe Bret, I don't know, was sandbagging? Maybe he could go, but didn't want to, and thought maybe now's not the time, or I don't want to go in there against a guy I don't really trust and not be at my best. I'm not saying that he was faking the injury, but maybe if it was somebody else, he would have tried to power through, but because it's Shawn, he doesn't want anybody saying, "Oh, Bret gave me a bad match," or whatever.
No, I think that Bret would not have taken that route if he was 100% healthy, because he was very mentally tough, very mentally tough, and he would not have backed away from the challenge. And it was a challenge for Bret to deal with Shawn and Shawn to deal with Bret, and for them to coexist as professionals. It was challenging. Everybody knows it was challenging. We know they had fights. We know that they had the thing in Montreal, et cetera, et cetera. But they had a legitimate rivalry. They apparently at the end of the day just despised each other. So, but I never thought Bret would walk away and upset the company and the plans of the company to draw money, which everybody in his locker room shared in. I didn't think he was that kind of guy, and I still don't think he's that kind of guy. So I don't believe in the Bret Hart conspiracy that he, plotted to sabotage the angle. I'm not going to buy that one.
Let's keep it moving here. And you do a sit down in this next episode where you're sitting down with Mankind and you're talking about him growing up and the whole plate of worms. Is this done the same way with Goldust? And why was the decision made to say, hey, you know what? These Goldust ones went well. Let's do it now for Foley. Why was he the right guy to go to next with this format?
Mick had a great story to tell, and we had footage. He had unique footage. We had that footage I mentioned earlier about Snuka coming off the cage in Madison Square Garden. We had footage of Mick wrestling as a teenager and jumping off the roof of his house or something into a mattress. We had some classic old footage that helped tell our story. And Mick was an amazing storyteller. This is before he'd written any of his books. And I think that some of the motivation, I should say, for him to write that first book was came out of some of those interviews that we did, because they got over so big, him just telling stories of his life. The story about playing lacrosse without a cup and getting hit in the gonads with a lacrosse ball or where the hell they are. He's a funny guy, and his stories are real and they're relatable. So, like he said, the only time that girls ever noticed his growing was his testicles were the size of grapefruits, and from that injury. So, but he just had a great story to tell, Conrad, and we needed to tell that story because we didn't really know if Mick was going to be fish or foul. His story down there made him a baby face because fans could relate to almost every step of his journey. But we didn't need him to be a baby face in the early going. We needed him to be a guy that we could put with Undertaker. That's why I hired him. Undertaker needed heels, and Mick's 6'4" and 300 pounds, and he could match up well. And both those guys liked each other from previous territories in Dallas and in Atlanta. So that was the deal. He just had a great story to tell, and we felt like we were compelled to tell it. And we had no script. We did that in a little studio on 120 Hamilton in Stanford. We had our crew there, and I noticed that as the night progressed, we did it after work. As the night progressed, we had more and more people hanging around. That usually meant one of two things. One, they're waiting on some really good catering, or they are really enthralled in what they're hearing. And so then all of a sudden we're doing this interview, I think we get to a point to take a break, a pee break or something, maybe to eat, I'm not sure. And all of a sudden I hear Vince's voice in the darkness, because the lights are on us, we can't see past the lights. And I remember what he said. He put it over like, "Damn, this is good shit, boys. This is good shit," something like that. And that was what's for a guy like Mick and myself. that was great validation. He couldn't have said anything better. And he never interjected his creativity. He never told us what to say. He never told those guys what to edit out. He just let it roll. So we just had that long conversation. The only thing we knew we were going to do at the end was I was going to get the mandible claw. And my only thought process was I going to get the shooting mandible claw or the working mandible claw. You know what the difference is, Conrad?
I don't.
All right. The shooting mandible claw is where he puts his two fingers in your mouth under your tongue and squeezes with his thumb under your chin. The working mandible claw is where he takes those same two fingers and bends them over in half, and it looks like they're in your mouth, but they're not. Luckily for me, I got the working mandible claw, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but that's how we were going to end it. But that's how we constructed our interview. That's why so many fans are saying it's going to be great for AEW because they're not going to have writers to write these promos to these guys and tell them what to say. They're going to let the talent say what they want as long as it's got some sort of structure, i.e., an outline of bullet points. That's what it's going to be. So that's great. But that interview was not written by anybody. No writers, no creative people were involved in it. In that respect, it was just Mick and I. Now everybody knew the story we were going to tell, but nobody wrote a script. I'm trying to say there's no teleprompter, no nothing like that. So we had it just clicked. I had good chemistry with Mick. I believed in his story. I knew his story thoroughly. I had to go to the wall to hire him, and all of a sudden, Vince standing there and saying, "This is good shit." I think it also gave Mick a great deal of confidence that Vince finally recognized that Mick Foley had a lot of talent.
Let's keep it moving here because I want to move on from the interview, but I feel like I have to ask when you're telling the sympathetic story about, the kids were making me eat worms and all that, but then you finish with, that makes you feel like, okay, he's going to be a sympathetic babyface. We're going to turn him babyface, but then he puts the mandible claw on good old JR. This is not traditional wrestling. This is shades of gray. It's not just standard good guys and bad guys, right?
Right. Yeah. It's a real story, and it just showed his unpredictability, that sometimes he had aggressive urges that could not be controlled, that he could not restrain himself from perpetrating. That's kind of how we looked at that thing. And so he's always got that unpredictable aura about him. And, that's kind of where we are. And of course, we knew that nobody wanted to be a star at WWE more than Mick Foley, for God's sakes. And apparently he would do anything to achieve that goal because he's done everything to get here, including lose a half a ear and, his head's all scarred up and, arms are scarred and he's walking crooked and, all that good stuff, losing teeth. He's paid a lot of prices, as obvious by his physical appearance. So you kind of we just told the whole story. And then you let the audience decide if they like him or, I don't know. I don't know if I like this guy or not. I don't know if I can trust him or not. So we just let it play out. Then you let the audience just make their own call. Did you like it or did you not like it? Is he a babyface? Is he a heel? And the audience should be able to decide that themselves.
We should mention here, because I do want to put a bow on this Bret thing for a minute. After the Sunny Days comment, he talks about in his book how, Julie, his wife, and Stu are upset. And then people at school are starting to sort of mess with his kids a little bit about the Sunny Days comment. And you have to call and apologize. And as a result, Bret would write in his book, throughout that week, I brooded about what to do. I wondered about beating the hell out of Shawn for real at the pay-per-view, but that could be costly to the company if he got badly hurt. And I had to be careful of my knee. I decided to tell Vince that I had to pull out of the pay-per-view because my knee wasn't ready. And Vince already had a plan. Stone Cold would catch me alone, flatten me, and bash the hell out of me, taking me out of the pay-per-view storyline. And that would be a clean win for Shawn, and what would have been a clean win for Shawn. We should remember that Bret had this arthroscopic knee surgery done on April 23rd. And we've set a stipulation here on this episode of Monday Night Raw on the 19th, that if he doesn't beat Shawn in 10 minutes, he'll never wrestle in the United States again. So it's over. Did you think at that point, we may never get this match? These guys are so sideways with each other, or did you think eventually it would happen?
Oh, I thought eventually it definitely would happen, without a doubt. Too much work had gone into it. They both knew that the one thing about that override their personal issues, Conrad, is from a professional standpoint, ego standpoint, is that they love having great matches. And nobody can deny that when those two cats are on with each other, they made great magic, great music, no doubt. So, yeah, I thought it would eventually happen. I just didn't know when or where or what shape it's going to take. But there's too much invested to not make it happen. And I knew that Bret was going to do all he could to get that stuff rolling, get back in the ring. He just had to restrain himself as best he could.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.